Good evening, everybody. Great to see some hearty souls here already for the live stream tonight. I am Matt Derrick, of course. Joining us later tonight for the live stream will be Nick Jacobs, and we're going to do our best to hopefully have a little Super Bowl therapy, look forward to next year, reflect on a fantastic season for the Chiefs. You can't complain too much about 15-2, a Super Bowl appearance. Yeah, so close to history, and it was a very disappointing finish. I know it was a hard game to watch on Sunday, but time to move forward, and I know it's time to do it. Although I am looking back a little bit. I have the Super Bowl 54 hat on, so that is a little bit, hey, get as many positive vibes as we can here tonight. For the discussion tonight. Hopefully, all have a good time and we can have some fun, crack some jokes, whatever it takes to kind of put the nasty taste of Sunday's game out of everybody's mind and out of your mouth and move forward and have some fun. The offseason officially started. The Chiefs signed 11 of their 16 practice squad members to contracts today, so starting to fill up the offseason roster as it is. And my gosh, I was reminded just today that it's basically less than 2 weeks away from the combine. So that's really when the offseason starts for me. Being in Indianapolis, Andy Reid, Brett Veach will be there and talking about the new season. So I don't have too much to dwell on. I don't think I have too many comments. I'm sure that any fun stories that I have, or hopefully juicy tidbits, anything that you want to know will come up in the discussion. If there's anything that comes along, might be some rants, I'm sure, from myself or Nick, who knows, but we'll just go for it. But Luttrell usually kicks us off with a little introduction there for the hooray, it's Q&A day. A little sad, not gonna lie, but it's about the journey, right? Correct. Exactly, Luttrell. And there's a lot of teams that would have loved to have been in a Super Bowl. Doesn't matter about the outcome. They would have enjoyed just making it to the Super Bowl. And you know what, Chiefs fans, 7 years ago, you'd say the same thing. Just getting to the Super Bowl would have been the first step. It would have been great. So it is an incredible run. And I say it is an incredible run because I do not believe it is over for this team. I believe that there is still more to come. I don't think this team is done by any stretch of the imagination. When you're 15-2, like I said, and I keep saying that, I look at these last two seasons and kind of a big picture because I think they were very similar, but there were some counterweights to it. Leicester was 11-6, and the Chiefs lost some games that, frankly, they shouldn't have lost. This year, they were 15-2, won some games that maybe they shouldn't have. So what are they? Are they 13-4 over the last two seasons? Yeah, I say they are. It's a 13-4 team. That's a really good team. Are there some improvements that can be made? Sure. There are some tweaks here and there. Absolutely. This team needs to do it. Nick and I will probably get in a few of those tonight about some things that maybe they should think about and consider. But one thing I do say is that, and I told this to Ryan Tracy earlier on Locked On Chiefs, is that, at the same time, as disappointing as this game is and as hard as that performance was to watch, and you want to make sure that you don't repeat mistakes, you also just can't overreact. And that's why it's good that there's some time between now, combine, free agency, draft, when you make those decisions, because, and I see some of the questions already, as far as, maybe making some reactions to that game. I don't feel like that there was anything in that game that you learned about the Chiefs. I think it only should have reinforced some things, and kind of talking about the way maybe you look at picks, and the combine, and we're getting ready to talk about, because this is one of the things that Brett Veach always says, is that, when you go to the combine, you get the numbers from players, and you get the measurements, you get the details, you get all the 40 times, all the combine measurements there. If you see something that doesn't reinforce what you saw on film, then you need to go back and watch the film and see what did you miss? What did you miss? If you watch that Super Bowl game, it should illustrate what you already knew were flaws on this team, areas where they weren't the best, areas where they can improve. And if you see something that stands out from that game, go back and watch the film. Go back and look at the last couple of years and see where it is. I mean, I still think that any of the flaws that you saw, that's that manifested themselves. And Nick and I kind of talked about this on 41 is the mic on Sunday. A lot of the Chiefs' sins were revealed in that game. Areas in which they struggled at times this year, where they had some moments. Nothing new popped up. So to me, if you thought that there were flaws on this team at 5:39 Central Time on Sunday, they were still there 3 hours later. And if you have new flaws that popped up, probably just need to go back and watch tape and see, because I think they were probably there before. Maybe you just missed them. Maybe we all just missed them, and maybe we didn't talk about them enough. But this is still a really, really good team, folks. I mean, I don't think there's any reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. This is a good club. They're going to continue to win football games. They're going to continue to compete for Super Bowls. Are there areas in which they can get better? Absolutely. Are there things that they can do better? Absolutely. Do I believe that this organization is committed to doing those things? Yeah, I do believe that they're committed to doing those things. So we'll see. I'm going to let you be the guide the rest of the night now that I've had my little say, and not saying there might not be a few little things that pop up here and there, but little rants, but we'll see what happens. We'll let you judge us the rest of the way. I saw Sharon Luttrell, why the third one? Career of 10 years. If luck isn't about the journey, it's about winning or so. So no, the loss totally sucks. And Sharon, yes, the loss should suck. I mean, I have no problems with that. Absolutely. Loss does suck. I mean, the players feel that way. The coaches feel that way. Everybody in the organization feels that way. You work in human resources for the Chiefs. You feel that way. It stinks. So at the same time, like I said, 7 years ago as a Chiefs fan, you would be ecstatic with where you are right now. I mean, it's been an incredible run, and like I say, it's a continuing run. So don't give up yet, Sharon. It's next year's a new year, and you guys still feel pretty positive about this team. Chris, if you were Andy Reid, would you add John Gruden to the coaching staff? Ooh, and I'm going to have to ask Nick when he comes in here what he thinks about that. I mean, there's some pluses and some minuses to it. I mean, and one for sure is, I would say is my only really biggest concern with it would be that I think this coaching staff needs new voices. I don't know that they need old voices. And I'm not saying that just from a John Gruden being a veteran and being around for a while. I'm saying that from a John Gruden is, he's not from the Andy Reid tree, but they are both from the Mike Holmgren tree and the Mike Holmgren school. I think you need some outside voices. I think you need some new reflection. I think you need some people on the coaching staff with new thinking and different thinking, not the same thinking and the same types. And that to me is what this coaching staff needs. So I would be looking outside the organization. I'd be looking outside like I said, I mean, outside your own tree, outside, the Holmgren tree. I'd be looking for people that just can bring a different voice and different thoughts. And, and they certainly have some young guys that probably fit into that category, but, somebody that can come in and maybe multiple somebodies that come in and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe you do this, or this is successful and would work, just mix things up a little bit. Hey, there's a lot to be said about continuity, and that's a big thing in the NFL for sure. But I think there's also, room for improvement through, bringing in new ideas and new thoughts. And Andy Reid's done that before. So I don't think he's afraid to do it again. I just don't know that, to me, Gruden does that. So, and that's not even getting into the part where, you would be tempting all sorts of fates with the NFL because of the fight that Gruden and the NFL are having. I don't think that they would particularly look very fondly on adding John Gruden to the staff. And I just have some concerns that Gruden wouldn't be the great voice. I mean, there was a lot of negatives that came out of his departure from Las Vegas and some deficiencies in his character that showed that I'm just not sure you want to bring into your organization. And that's not, nothing necessarily bad about John Gruden. It's just that I just don't think that he would be a great fit with what the culture of this organization is. But that's just me. Tyler, good evening, Matt. Can you give a guess on when we'll be hearing from Brett Veach for his end of year presser if you don't already have an exact date? Um, I would imagine, based on what my understanding so far, I think the next time we're going to hear from Brett Veach will probably be at the NFL Combine. The Chiefs, the last few years, and technically, yes, they are supposed to have an availability with the coach in the locker room after the end of the season. The Chiefs have not traditionally done that when they've been in the Super Bowl, so didn't have an availability today. I'm not expecting anything this week with the coach in the locker room, but the next time that we will hear from Brett Veach will likely be at the Combine in Indianapolis. I believe that's going to be probably around the 28th or so, give or take a day. So really just a couple of weeks away. So that's when I'm next expecting to hear from Brett Veach. There could be a surprise pop up, but I think that's going to be the next time that we hear from him or Andy Reid. John, what do you make of KC's offensive line surrendering the first, third, 9th, 14th, and 15th highest pressure rates in Super Bowls since 2001? That's a great question, John. And I almost want to put a pin in this and wait till Nick Burt comes in, but I'm going to give my answer here and then circle back and have Nick, because I know he's got some thoughts on it too. And I don't want to presume what Nick might say about this, but that's pretty consistent. I mean, that's ridiculously consistent as far as giving up a lot of pressure in these big games and pressures, and that's. I mean, it's surprising to me that to a degree that's been like that. I mean, I would have guessed obviously that the Tampa Bay loss fit in there. Obviously, last night would have fit in there. I'm kind of surprised that as I'm putting my headphones on for when Nick gets here. I'm surprised that and I hadn't seen that number, John. So I'm a little bit surprised that the others fit in there too. But it is somewhat consistent that offensive line has been a problem for this team, and at least is working as a unit in the big games. And you get 2 weeks to look at a team, and we normally think about that being an advantage for Andy Reid, and I normally do. It should have been this time around, wasn't this time around. Maybe those 2 weeks are an advantage for some other teams and looking what the Chiefs do offensively. Now, you also, outside of really the 2019 Super Bowl, and I would assume that I'm hoping that was like maybe the 15th pressure rate in that one. Since then, you haven't really seen the Chiefs offensive line at its best. I mean, 2019 was, I think, that the best offensive line of that group. I'd have to go back and look at it. I feel like the Chiefs have dealt with injuries or had at least one offensive lineman missing or out of place in some position in every one of these Super Bowls, if not more than one. So that certainly could be a factor, and obviously was a factor in Tampa Bay for sure. But I think that there's some elements there that are a concern, and that, once again, John, I mean, you look at what happened on Sunday, and you look at the pressure that the offensive line and the performance of that offensive line, and is that new? Is that a new information? No, it's just the latest data point and the Chiefs have had difficulties in that, they have spent second round pick, third round pick, or on players such as Kingsley Suamataia, Wanye Morris, Lucas Niang. I think you could even go back to Eric Fisher if you want to include this conversation, and every name in between. The Chiefs have had some successes in developing offensive linemen, maybe becoming something more than they are. I mean, Andrew Wiley was a undrafted free agent who bounced around to a few teams and comes to Kansas City, finds a place, finds his role, gets paid as a free agent, performs there too pretty well. Not a Pro Bowler, but a consistent performer, reliable performer that you can use as an affordable guy in an offensive line. Nick Allegretti fits in that same description. But once again, 6th round draft pick with Allegretti. I mean, hey, you would love to be able to take a 6th round draft pick and turn him into a starter, but that's not a guarantee. But you've turned those guys into productive players. The problem is that when you're spending 1st round picks, 2nd round picks, 3rd round picks on offensive linemen, those not only should be consistent starters, you need those guys to be, anchors for your team. And they've had hits. Creed Humphrey, that's a hit. Okay. But there've been way too many misses. Trey Smith, hit. But there's been other misses late in the drafts too. So there's just an inconsistency there. And so to me, that tells me one of two things. Either your scouting is inconsistent, your coaching is inconsistent, or both. So take a look at it, measure, evaluate it, see where you're at, see, talk to your players, evaluate your scouting staff, see whether you think that there's a discrepancy. Look at, the performances of your scouts. Are you missing, are you just overlooking players that maybe your scouts have told you, or, that you recommend, and you went a different direction? Do you have scouts that are just missing completely on your evaluation? Are you selecting players that maybe don't fit your scheme and what you do? And there's a couple of things we can even talk about that if it comes up tonight. There's one player in particular, not an offensive lineman, that I'm wondering if anybody has a question about that might come in, that might fit in with this whole question about right player in the right place. But to me, the offensive line is a great example of how I think you just need a holistic evaluation of everything that you do. It's not about necessarily even, just fixing the offensive line with the right players. You need to figure out what it is that is leading you to get into these positions. Injuries have been a part of it, sure. Luck has been a part of it, for sure. But the offensive line has been inconsistent for a long time. I mean, even and you could even say, hey, if you draft a player 1-1 overall in 2013, did Eric Fisher live up to being a 1-1? Probably not. I mean, was he a good player? Absolutely. I'm not going to knock Eric Fisher. I think he did a lot for this team. He was a really, really good player, and he deserves the Super Bowl rings. But hey, did you get the most out of Eric Fisher? I don't know. Maybe the Chiefs did. Maybe it was, it was a rough draft year. Everybody said so. The review afterwards, it was pretty wildly inconsistent. It wasn't necessarily a terrific first round. There were some good players taken, but wasn't anybody that there wasn't anybody else that went that you said that at the time people were saying, oh, this player's got to be 1-1. No, I mean, so there's areas where, hey, I think the Chiefs probably made the right selections. Maybe they just didn't work out. But there's a disconnect somewhere along the line as far as whether you're drafting the right players and putting them in the system, or you've got a system that isn't, maybe it's better for veterans than it is for younger players. I don't know. I mean, and that's why I want to bring this up with Nick, because I know Nick has some strong thoughts on this, and I think they're good, smart, informed thoughts on this, and from people that he's talked to. So I'll circle back on John and bring this up. Jackson and Kelsey didn't put up any effort. Why? I'm going to push back a little bit on that, Jackson, because I think that Kelsey, if you watch the complete plays, I think there was effort there. I mean, was he worn out? Was he tired? Was he exhausted after a long season, and maybe it manifested itself at the wrong time? Yeah. Am I going to buy into the thoughts that, hey, the Taylor being shown up on the board, and I know there's a lot of stories out there right now about how Taylor Swift being put up on the scoreboard, and some fans booing got into his head. I think, if anything, I think that would normally motivate him. I think there was more effort there than we realized, and maybe it was first evident, and maybe because some of it was probably body language. I think he was certainly frustrated after he missed a couple of catches. I think there was I think there was one fair drop in there. I think there was one where Mahomes had, didn't put the ball in a good place. But I also feel like, hey, you asked way too much of Travis Kelce this season at his age. And I know that he signed up for it. I mean, Travis Kelce is the first guy that's going to be out there saying that he wants to be on the field, that he's not going to take himself off. And so there's some self-realization that Travis Kelce has to go through too, in recognizing that he's not the same player that he used to be. He can't be playing 1,000 snaps a season, which he did this year. This was the most snaps, highest percentage of snaps that he's played in, I think, the last 5 years. You can't do that at age 35. So he's got to have some self-realization, and the Chiefs have to have some self-realization. I think he can still be a very productive player, and maybe even more productive than he was this year if you just manage his workload better. And the Chiefs did not collectively or individually did not manage his workload this year well at all. So I think that was a big part of it more than anything. I didn't see a tremendous lack of effort. I thought there was some frustration there, and that's to be understood. With the way things that were going, I think he was disappointed in himself. And like I said, I mean, I'm not going to discount the Taylor Swift stuff. Maybe that moment did have a bigger impact than we know. I just know that Travis is not normally the kind of guy that's going to let anything like that get into his head, and if anything, it's motivation. But I thought he put up as much of an effort that honestly a guy at his age can and should be expected to do. And then Jackson, your second question, Reed didn't really seem to take accountability after the game. Is this concerning? I felt like he did. I mean, I thought he acknowledged that coaching was an issue in this game, that they did not get things down. I think obviously, Andy Reid is always going to protect his players. That's just a given. So, he is not going to blame the guys. If he felt like that there was a lack of effort, a lack of execution on his team, I mean, he might say that in week 4. Maybe he'll just say, well, we didn't execute real well. It's something of that nature. He's not going to throw it on one person. He's not going to throw it on a coach or an individual player. But I felt like he did. I mean, and hey, I'm not always going to hold everybody accountable for what they say after a game like this and what their thoughts are. But I thought that, I mean, I'll be honest, Jackson, I thought he did take appropriate accountability, at least for himself. I don't think that he distributed any blame, which I expect that's completely Andy Reid. I don't think he's not the kind of guy that's going to do that. So that wasn't concerning to me. And by and large, I thought that this team handled the loss really, really well. I mean, you should expect disappointment. You can expect frustration, especially after all this success. There's guys on this team that had been here their third season, never lost a Super Bowl, never lost a playoff game. So, I understand it being tough, but I thought that even though that was a very, very quiet locker room to be in down in New Orleans, I thought they handled it really, really well. Brenda, this one hurt worse than Las Vegas to me. Did it to anyone else? Is it time to overhaul the O-line? I mean, I'll circle back to what I was talking about earlier, Brenda, and with John's question, and I'll loop in Nick into this too when he gets here. I mean, there's some of that, yes. You probably do need to overhaul the line. You've also made some decisions that the die is cast, and you're going to have to live with. But I don't think it's, once again, I don't think it's as much about overhauling the offensive line as it is about just overhauling your philosophies and your concepts and taking a big picture, holistic view of everything that's going on. So when Nick gets here, and I know he's in the green room, so we'll be here in a few minutes, and we'll get into this because I think that'll be a pretty good discussion. As I'm very interested to hear Nick's thoughts at this point, 48 hours after the game. Paul, would you really love to hear why you think they just didn't seem to be into the game? No emotion at all. For me, that was most disappointing. I mean, I thought there was emotion there. I just think that the Eagles had more. That was what was really impressive to me, and I think you have to tip your hat to the Eagles for, because they showed up. They had the effort. I mean, they out-muscled the Chiefs. They outworked the Chiefs. They out-hustled the Chiefs. That's impressive. I mean, sometimes the other team does that. And maybe this was just a culmination of a lot of things. It was a culmination of just a long couple of weeks, a long few years, a long week in particular, getting a lot of questions about the refs and all of these things. And, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but there was even some harping from the Chiefs side of things that, because of the three-peat, because of just who they are and the team they are, that there was more demands placed upon them than there were on the Eagles. Is that legitimate and fair? Maybe it is. So, maybe that's part of the equation. Maybe the Chiefs did have more, but I thought they had appropriate amount of emotion. One person who always has an excess of emotion is Nick Jacobs.
I like how you said that while I had a Stonewall face on. That's my favorite part.
Nicholas, how are you this evening?
Hello, Matthew, Derrick. It's a pleasure to be on the Chiefs therapy session. Some people call it Q&A. I call it a fellowship. Whatever you want to call it. This is where we all are collectively.
I thought you'd particularly enjoy my borrowing your line about being a Sherpa as we head forward on this journey of ours.
Oh yeah, you gonna be a football Sherpa, a Chief Sherpa? What type of Sherpa are we talking here?
Whatever kind of Sherpa people need, Nick.
And how much are the health benefits? Is there a 401k plan? These are the questions I have, Matt. These are the questions.
The rewards are in life lessons.
That doesn't pay for house insurance, mortgage, or the grocery store I went to earlier, or food in general.
No, but on your deathbed, you'll receive total consciousness, which is nice.
All right, then. Well, good luck with that one.
What do you think about this, Nick? Do you think that was there anything you saw in the effort, in emotion and lack of emotion effort from the Chiefs?
I mean, there was times where they looked flat, but I mean, I think I think the Eagles' defensive line punched that offense in the mouth. The secondary let them know that it was going to be a long day, and they continued to let them know it was a long day, and then they just slowly took their will, and then they outplayed them, out-hustled them, and then, and part of that could be – here's the thing that people don't think about sometimes. The Chiefs, how many games they have played in the postseason since 2019? And I know there's only a handful of players on this team that have done that, but those are your key pillars of the team for the most part that have played since 2019. So they're playing, 3 to 4 games on average, depending if they're a wild card or not, since 2019. So when you take that all combined and everything, that's essentially a full football season for those guys. So the Travis Kelce's of the world have played an additional football season. So they should actually be a vested veteran even further than what they already are. I had another year on for him and Mahomes and Chris Jones and Harrison Butker, James Winchester, and some of those guys. I mean, that's part of it, man. So, I mean, there's that aspect to it. But I don't know. Sometimes, I hate to say it, but sometimes you got to get kicked in the teeth to get hungry again.
100%. And you're here. I want to circle back to a couple of questions that I talked about before you got here,
Okay.
and then we can go in the lightning round and really start catching up. Because
are we still calling it lightning round?
I mean, it is a thing. I mean, it exists.
It's a leisurely stroll round.
It exists. It's just that occasionally I may pontificate a little bit longer than I plan to, and then all of a sudden it's
it's mall walking round.
It's 7:30 and I'm already on questions from 7:03. But John started it off with, what do you make of KC's offensive line surrendering the 1st, 3rd, 9th, 14th, and 15th highest pressure rates in Super Bowls since 2001? And, Brenda circling back, is it time to overhaul the offensive line?
So I'm gonna be long-winded on this one because you're in my wheelhouse right now.
Need a good rant, Nick. So,
time mission accomplished. Here we are.
That's what we've signed up for. We're all here for it.
So, look, here's the reality about things. The thing they are going to have to decide, the number one thing they have to decide in this offseason is what is the disconnect in the offensive line. From a scouting perspective, is there certain characteristics that they're looking for that are accurately and spot on? Is it that they're going with a guy who's got the high-end ceiling from a scouting perspective, or are they getting the guy that's already fundamentally sound technique-wise and is going to be a reliable starter for 4, 5, 6 years before they have to make a decision? That's kind of when you take Creed Humphrey coming out of Oklahoma. Creed already had the high-end ability, already had the technique because he's got a fantastic O-line coach in Oklahoma. Trey Smith had a good O-line coach in Tennessee, already had the fundamentals down, and had high upside as well. That's why they were both on my board. And they have been able to maintain who they were coming out of college to now. Within the offseason, they go work with Duke Mayweather down at O-Line Masterminds to get better each and every year. They do that. They make that type of commitment so that they can get better in the offseason, so they're not just stagnant over and over again, that they steadily improve each and every year, and they take those techniques and they use those during the season. That isn't by accident. That's because they care enough about their craft and they're passionate enough to go out there and do that. So you have to have work ethic too for an offensive lineman to be successful. They have to be just as obsessive about their craft as Patrick is with his. and really any professional that's in football. That's what you want, and that's what a characteristic that you need. So, from a scouting perspective, are you looking for the right characteristics? Does the skill set fit who they are? For example, take an offensive lineman like Zach Fulton. Zach Fulton athletically never really fit what the Chiefs did. He was a serviceable offensive lineman, but stiff as a board. And he still developed enough, but he was a liability at times at right guard to where he went down to he went down to the Houston Texans and made money. So he was able to go down there and be able to make money after he left the Chiefs offensive line and did that. Take somebody like Eric Fisher that they drafted first overall in 2013. Eric Fisher is an individual that had bad habits. He would have his rookie year, had his hands in his holsters. Never had him up there ready to punch. So if a defender got into his chest, he could be able to either swipe and then reset, or whatever he needed to do, they would be ready to punch to always keep a defender at arm's length. If you do it and have some stunning punches, that would stop a defender in their tracks sometimes. So you have that aspect to it. And Eric had the athletic ability to where even when Fisher had bad technique, he could still overcome it because of how strong and freakishly athletic he was. Then next part of the offensive line discussion is where are they at strength training wise? Are they where they need to be from a strength training perspective? Because the Eagles defensive line bench pressed most of them in that Super Bowl game. And that's a big problem too. So that's the other question that they got to find out. What are they doing strength training wise? Is it up to where they need to be? Is it something that's going to stop them from getting bench pressed by the Eagles defensive line in the future? Or is there something technique wise that caused that as well? Then you go down to the O-line coach level. From an O-line coaching perspective, with the players that are being drafted and invested in, and I know you talked, I'm sure you've talked about it. Lucas Niang, you invested a top 100 pick. Kingsley Suamataia, you invested a top 100 pick. Trey Smith, you got in the 6th round. Creed Humphrey, you invested a top 100 pick. And of the offensive linemen you've drafted over the years, when I really think about it, we'll see what Hunter Norzad can be, but he's more of a late pick. Nick Allegretti was a late pick, but when you look at that overall offensive line, Andrew Wiley was an undrafted free agent. Zach Fulton was kind of in the middle, if I remember correctly, during Dorsey era. But when you look at the offensive line overall, they're investing in it. Now, what's going to happen down the road here, and where my bigger concern is for this football team, is Patrick turns 30 this year. Patrick's body and ability to recover is going to take a hit at some point the older he gets. That's just what happens with every quarterback in the NFL at some point. Now, Patrick's got Bobby Stroop. Bobby has phenomenal training sessions and has been able to keep Patrick a lot healthier than people realize with some of the times he's gotten bent and and the flexibility he has and the pliability he's had. Patrick's avoided some injuries that other quarterbacks in the league in previous years, whether they're Chiefs or otherwise, would have been out for the year and may have never been the same quarterback again. But Patrick was able to do that. So for the first couple of years, Patrick was able to run around, scramble around, because he was fresh, body was fresh, hadn't taken a lot of NFL hits over the years, hadn't had that wear him down over time, and he could throw it all over the yard. But as each passing year is getting to this point, and the Eagles, again, took part of the blueprint from what the Chargers were doing. They took part of the blueprint of what Matt Patricia and the Lions were doing. They took part of the blueprint of what the Buccaneers were doing and what some other teams have done. And Lou Anarumo, what they've done, Lou Anarumo dropped back 8. That was the key thing that he did for the most part, was just drop back 8. Then good luck going through the zones. So Vic Fangio took that part of it and had it in the Super Bowl. Vic Fangio did it as quarters, did a variety of other aspects. I know he had some cover 6, and there's a couple other coverages that I saw that he had sprinkled in throughout all their offensive play drives. And I'll look it up here in a minute on my phone, but I'm going to roll right now. So I'll check it out in a minute. But he had that. Then he took what the Chargers used to do against the Chiefs before the Harbaugh era, and they would have Bosa and at the time Melvin Ingram. And they would have one go wide 9, take away that ability for Mahomes to scramble to his right or to scramble to his left, and dictate where he could not run to create, to break down the defense's coverages. So they could manipulate where they wanted him to go. And in doing that, what the Eagles did this past week is they had both the guys get up there, contain Mahomes in the pocket, and then slowly collapse it in on him with the defensive tackles, or force him to go to a specific lane that they wanted. And that's the lane you go to where the linebacker is waiting for you, and the zone coverage is already there anyways to be able to take care of you. So they dictated where they wanted Patrick to go with the football. They dictated how they wanted Patrick to play, and it caused a lot of problems for him. So now as an offensive line, what they've got to evaluate now is NFL teams in the future are going to try to replicate this in free agency. So when you watch free agency, the Buffalo Bills of the world, the Cincinnati Bengals of the world, the Baltimore Ravens of the world, they may go add a little bit more here and there to their pass rush to see if they can do what the Eagles did, because they're probably not gonna recreate what the Bucs did. But the new thing is going to be trying to replicate what Vic Fangio did. So then, what the Chiefs' entire offensive coaching staff, what Patrick Mahomes is going to have to do, what anybody on that offensive side is going to have to do, is how do they combat that? What is the answer that they have to have for that now as receivers? Is there a certain type of receiver they need that can blend in through zone coverage, but get off the line quickly, weave in and out of zone coverage, and have that wavelength with Patrick like Rashee Rice did? Do you need more of that? Over the top with Worthy? Or is he able to do the ins and outs of that zone coverage or the quick passing game that they've been doing? Then they're going to have a collection of receivers that can quickly do one or the other and allow them to win in a multitude of ways versus whatever the coverage or scheme they're going against. That's the coverage aspect of it with the receivers and also with potentially the running backs, because they didn't have speed at running back this year. So not having speed at running back this year caused the ability, because you think about this, last year from time to time and the year before from time to time, when Mahomes needed to, he could toss it down to Derrick McKinnon. Let him keep that line moving. So like this past Super Bowl, you saw what not having Derrick McKinnon in the flats was like. Or not having a Jamal, Mahomes never had Jamal Charles, but having a Jamal Charles type of threat that you could use in the screen game, or you could use in the flats, or they could catch an angle route out of the backfield in that type of aspect of it. So you don't have that speed back that keeps you in favorable down and distance and really stretches the defense when they're dropping back, with 8 in coverage, that you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take that 5 years. Going to take that 5 yards. Going to take that 5 yards. You guys having fun yet? That's cool. Here's another 5. Here's another 5. You like the paper cuts? Cool. Okay, here's another one. Oh, hey, look, we're at the 30-yard line. Oh, hey, I'll be heck. But you have that. And then from an offensive line perspective with the run game, what type of run game do they actually want to be? That is what they have to decide. Do you want to be finesse? Do you want to be power? Do you want to be a counter type scheme? Do you want to be gap? Do you want to be zone? What do you want to be? Because Matt, you were there that day when I asked Andy Heck about offensive line blocking scheme middle of the year. I didn't ask that by accident. I wanted to hear what his response would be about what he thought of why they like to be a multitude of things. And he said so they could, I think the way he phrased it was something along the lines of, well, then, if this isn't working, then they can go to this. But the thought process in my head at the time is, okay, but don't you need to be good at something that you can lean on no matter what? That if you run something enough, you can run it down people's throats like the Baltimore Ravens do, that you practice something to the level of excellence that you can lean on in tough times when the Philadelphia Eagles are just crashing you back into your star quarterback and embarrassing you on a national stage? That's the question that I want to know is, do you want to have the answer? Do you want to chase excellence? Because that is what I am after and watching as an observer. So when I got the answer I was like, okay, well, it is what it is on that front. So I apologize for how long winded this rant has been. But what I'm getting at is Andy Heck's been the O-line coach since 2013. He's been here as long as Andy Reid. And then Corey Matei has been the assistant O-line coach for a couple of years. So are their voices still resonating? Or what they teaching still resonating? And I think deep down Andy Reid, he's a guy who believes in everybody that he hires. He believes in everybody that he has either on his coaching staff or that they've gotten as a player. And he wants to give them every opportunity to succeed, every first chance, second chance, third chance, and every chance possible. And he knows that everybody's giving him his best, or for the most part they are. If they don't, then at some point they end up moving on, or they finally say, yeah, it's probably not working out. But I think personally for Andy, he believes that he has to coach up every coach to make them as successful as possible so he can give back to football everything that it's given to him. And I think that means a lot to him. And when people say they need to fire this person, they need to fire that person, they need to remove this person, remove that person, at the end of the day, I think if Andy has to do that, just me, I don't know this personally, but the vibe I get from being around him over the years is I think stuff like that would bother him the most. Like in the way that Tom Brady talks about how the Super Bowl keeps him up at night, I think Andy does not want to fail people. And I think Andy wants to invest as much as people invested in him along the road. I think he wants to invest that same level in each and every coach and every single player and the players' families that people have done for him. And I think he always wants to pay that forward. So I think that's the balancing act that Andy Reid has always had, is that he is having to be in between what's best for the franchise, what's best for Patrick Mahomes, what's best for this person, and what gives did he cut bait too soon on somebody that he should have invested a little bit more time in, and they could have turned into a great coach. Because I think Andy takes pride in when you take for like the divisional round, when it's John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, and Ryans from the Texans, and every single one of them either played for him or coached for him, and they're all a part of his tree in some capacity. And they were the Final Four standing in the divisional round. I think that means a lot to Andy, personally. And I think that, for him, that's a source of pride to where, hey, I did right by those guys because look at the success they're having too. So I hope that rant made sense. But at the end of the day, the number one question they got to have is what keeps 15 upright, what keeps him as healthy as possible, because that is going to determine how many more championships they can go to, how many more Super Bowls they can win, how many more chances Patrick has to chase the argument that's going to relentlessly go on about who's the greatest quarterback of all time, or who's the greatest quarterback of now, or who's the greatest quarterback sitting in the Wendy's parking lot drive-through. Whatever argument people want to have, it doesn't matter, because Patrick has to get through his career before you can gauge where he was in terms of stats or in terms of impact on the game or whatever it may be. So I don't care what anybody says about this person or that person while they're playing. Let's see where they're at when it's done, when it's over. Until then, it doesn't matter. So that is a big part of my rant. I apologize. And keep on keeping on.
It was a good rant, Nick. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was a good rant. So it needed to be said. And, and you struck one thing, because you talked about that question that you asked of Andy Heck, and then you brought back to, with Andy Reid and, the way that he works with and manages the people that work for him. I mean, here's the thing is that you're right. I mean, the Chiefs are multiple as far as offensive line goes. Andy Heck views as a strength. And yet I remember the discussion, a few years ago when the Chiefs invested in Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. It was like, hey, wait a minute. The Chiefs are bringing in some maulers here. They're bringing in some guys who can go full throttle man blocking. They can get away from all of the zone work that they've done in the past and just manhandle some people. And now it seems like that they've made the conscious decision to be all things to all people at all times. And now they're good at a bunch of stuff, but not great at any one thing. And that's not, I mean, Andy was part of that decision. So clearly, it's not, I think there's probably a part of him that, feels like, hey, maybe he failed some of his coaches by either whether it was his decision or whether he co-signed this decision. Either way, he went along with it. And ultimately, Andy Reid's going to fault himself for anything that doesn't work on the offense.
Right. And that's why people, whenever you're in the press conference, say Andy said that's on me. He really genuinely believes that. But he also does that. He may know that this player may have done this, or this coach may have not gotten the player prepared on that. But at the end of the day, Andy truly does believe that that's on him for not having made sure that either got corrected at those levels. And at the end of the day, that's what he, as a head coach, in his mind, is supposed to be.
And I love the rant, the rant, Knicks rants, whatever you want to call it. And if I can talk straight, I just want to also just note very, very subtly, it's not always my fault that we're not in lightning round.
Hey,
but I say that I tease with love. I kid because I care.
Yeah, no, I mean that was a long one, but people
and this is your off day.
So people rate that rant. Give it a 1 to 10.
Oh, it was a 10.
Right. No, we got to hear from the comment section. The people have to speak. Okay.
We'll hear from them. Give us your score. I'm saying it's a 10. So
treat it like an Olympic event. What would you give it?
Chiefs comments. Tell us how to feel, Matt and Nick. Don't want to be hyperbolic after 5 Super Bowls in 7 years with 3 wins, but the losses are embarrassing, and they were almost carbon copy losses. Which feels worse? I mean, this loss has to hurt the most, just because there was so much history on the line, and and once again, 2020 hindsight. But 2020 hindsight, Chiefs fans should have everybody should have been able to see Super Bowl 55 coming, because the injuries just took their toll. That there was nothing left in the tank of that team. There was no way that they were going to protect Mahomes that night with that offensive line. And no offense to the guys that were on the line, but it's just, you get that many injuries that deep, there was no prayer for that team. This one, I mean, maybe in 3 or 4 years we'll feel the same way and look back at it and say, yeah, you know what? They just had a couple of pieces missing. The injuries caught up with them. I mean, it cost them too much continuity, cost them too much. They didn't have the left tackle. Maybe it'll be the same thing. It's like, we should have seen this coming. That it was just it was inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, this one I think is going to haunt them a little bit more because of how close they were to history and being the first to do something in the NFL/Super Bowl era. So I think this one's the one that's going to bother them the most, that we're here and invested for those previous 2 Super Bowls.
I'm going to skip to this question real quick because I didn't say it outright, but hopefully, sorry, I'm butchering that. Hopefully you took it from my tone and from what I was saying earlier. Yes, firing Reed, firing Veach, firing Nagy, firing Spags, anything that involves firing some people, but anybody you just listed right there, yes, it's out of bounds and crazy. There's absolutely no reason to consider that. And I have seen, and I'm sure they're probably Eagles fans are actually saying it, but the whole, time to move on from Mahomes thing. If you're actually in Chiefs Kingdom and you believe that, get out of Chiefs Kingdom. That's just nonsensical. Chris, Chiefs offense has become stale. Is it better to make a clean break and rebuild it with Kelsey retiring instead of him retiring for another season? What do you think, Nick?
I mean, look, I think on the offensive coaching staff, they need to bring in, and you and I talked about this during the season, so I was like, we'll wait and see if I end up being wrong or what ends up happening down the road here. But just the opportunity to add some new perspectives from other either coaching trees or other offensive philosophies, and being able to kind of blend it together. What's really successful at the college level, or what's really successful in a different tree, and kind of be able to kind of match that together with what they've done. It's just part of it at times is, I think they've who Patrick Mahomes is and what the Chiefs offense is, I think teams have a pretty good beat on. So the question becomes, going forward, is there a way you can surprise them? Can you out execute them with better talent? Or do you have an offensive line that can protect Patrick Mahomes for 7 seconds, like Trent Green used to have in Dick Vermeil's offensive line, that allows him to just be able to wait out the coverage and win on every single rep? So there's a different handful of ways they can go about it, but at the end of the day, they do need to add some fresh perspectives in my opinion, to help them kind of evolve in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you can have independently, you know, rebuilding the offense, retooling the offense, adding some fresh elements apart from parting ways with Kelsey. I mean, you're going to when you move on from Travis Kelsey, there's going to be a hole in this offense. I mean, as it has been said for many many years, the Andy Reid offense runs through the tight end. So if you don't have Travis Kelsey, it's going to be running through Noah Gray. It's going to be running through Jared Wiley. It's going to be running whomever else that you bring in or acquire, draft, trade for, you name it. So, there's still an element of that. And I still think that I honestly believe there's still good football in Travis Kelsey. I think you just need to, use his time and his snaps more efficiently. And I think you can absolutely get some more out of him. He's still one of the better tight ends in the league. I mean, the dude caught, what was it, 97 catches this year, Nick?
No.
I mean, there's 98% of the tight ends in the league would kill for those numbers.
No.
So, and was he as efficient as he's been in the past? No, but did he also play more than 1,000 snaps this season at age 35? Yeah. And I think you just need to be a little bit more judicious with how you work him. Cody, why did Andy game plan around deep shots? You need an O-line for that. Why did he move Tony back to his post? Why? A lot of whys there, Nick.
I think they were trying a whole bunch of different things to see if they could find a spark. I think they wanted to. Did they want to do a deep shot early? Yeah, they tried. They wanted to set a tempo. They wanted to create a spark, get some excitement and explosiveness to Worthy deep that wasn't there. So then Mahomes had to check it down to Juju, if I remember correctly, on the first or second drive. And then there were some other opportunities. I think they were trying to create a spark with Worthy and try to take advantage of him being able to outrun that secondary, but production didn't give him time, so it didn't work out. And look, I think they were going to stick with what they'd practiced with Tooney at left tackle and Caliendo at left guard, and that decision burned him.
Yeah, I know in the second half there was a lot of waiting game in the press box of, okay, and watching is saying, okay, is this the drive that they make a move? Then they do anything. I didn't think that at any point it made sense to a degree. I mean, there was no evidence that you made a move at that point and you move Tooney back to left guard and you bring in a new left tackle that it was going to change anything. I mean, the Eagles had their plan and they were executing it perfectly. And I don't even think that the second coming of Willie Roaf could have come in there and fixed things in the second half. I mean, the die was cast at that point. I do have some quibbles a little bit, obviously, with whether it was the script, which there was a couple of those plays that were clearly in the script, but I've got a lot of questions about, why wasn't the run game more incorporated into the script early on? I do think that Mahomes' eyes drifted a little bit downfield, even on some plays that were not necessarily designed exclusively as deep shots, because I think he wanted to hit it. He was looking for the deep ball. He was looking to set the tempo, like exactly what you said. And, and that was after, 2 years ago. And I know it's a completely different defense, but a lot of the same personnel, and honestly, a defense with some of the same weaknesses and strengths. That first pass to Juju Smith-Schuster, I thought was the tone setter. I thought, okay, this is it. They're just gonna move the ball downfield in these 7-8 yard chunks and just short passes, crisp passes over the middle, get the ball out to Worthy, move the ball downfield, and then all of a sudden it just changed on the dime. And hey, the miss the Kelsey probably factored a little bit into it, but I think Andy Reid absolutely does own a little bit, because the game plan was not, I think, an executable game plan as far as, and could it have been if they got the looks that they wanted? Possibly. But it was the wrong plan against the wrong defense at the wrong time. I started scrolling. Sorry.
They're fine.
I was going to see what your rant scores were. Have you looked?
No, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
Whatever they choose, I'll accept.
You'll live with the scores. Oh, let's see. Lightning round is what we say.
Sure.
Alex, do you think Kelsey at his age is part of the issues with Mahomes? Seems like he locks on to Kelsey a lot instead of going to who is open right away. I mean, some of it's just Kelsey. I mean, Mahomes is going to go to the guy he knows, right?
Look, I mean, with the Kelsey thing, it's some of it's a matter of trust. If Rashee Rice was out there, Mahomes trust him. Mahomes had to build that trust up with him when teams were taking Travis Kelsey away last year. So he built that up with him. By the end of this year, Mahomes had the trust with Worthy. So I mean, there's guys that if he just gets time to work with, he creates the trust with. So out there on a given play, Kelsey's going to have the most trust because of how many times they've been together. But the Eagles were going to take that away, and then there was a handful of plays Patrick was able to get to Worthy because they were able to make it happen because of Worthy's speed. So that was part of what was built is Mahomes being able to get the ball to Worthy in that game. That is a piece of that game that you take a positive from that know that him and Mahomes can build on that. And Mahomes knows, okay, I can toss it up deep to him now and he'll run under it and go get it. So like he has that now to where Mahomes effortlessly tossed that thing almost 70 yards for a touchdown. So, and that was very Tyreek Hill-esque versus the Atlanta Falcons in the preseason game back in 2018. So, yeah, just, I mean, I don't know. Just overall, collectively, it's, I mean, whatever happens to Kelsey's whatever happens. Like if he comes back, that's cool. If he decides to end his football career, I get it too. So, but I mean, long term, the Chiefs are having to start to pivot from who they're going to be for this next era of Patrick Mahomes football, whether 87 is or isn't there.
Mr. M, what would you do at left tackle? Personally, the only pending free agent I would want is the Rams left tackle. If not, got to trade up and get Josh Simmons. Maybe, but maybe Veach won't because he doesn't like Ohio. Brett Veach loves football players. He'll take them from anywhere. This is going to be the million dollar question on the offseason, Nick, about what the Chiefs do at left tackle because I mean, I'm under the firm belief that the starting left tackle in week 1 next year is not on this roster right now.
Well, it goes back to what I ranted about a little bit ago. If you go say you go draft a tackle, are you going to be able to develop that tackle into what they need to be? Are they going to be a reliable cornerstone for the next 4 to 5 years for Patrick Mahomes to where he doesn't have the same amount of left tackles that that Josh Allen's probably had coordinators or some other, quarterback that's had coordinator wise. Because Allen's had Brian Dable, he's had Ken Dorsey, and then I know he's finally got Joe Moreno right now. But you just want stability to where this tackle knows where to go to. Patrick knows where that tackle is going to set up at, and then that's going to be that. So whatever it is, you're hoping it's a long-term fix. You just got to determine if you've got all the pieces in place, whether it's from a scouting part, from a coaching part, or ability, you want it to be fixed long-term.
Yeah, and I mean, there's going to be some interesting names to be talked about. I mean, amongst them, like he mentions, Joe Noteboom is one of those potential free agents. Cam Robinson from the Vikings is a potential free agent. Ronnie Stanley. I mean, those are the biggest names in that group. Alaric Jackson, I guess, also from the Rams, might be also referring to their Mr. M. There's a few different names, but once again, I mean, quality left tackles in free agency are going to cost you a lot of money. And yes, the Chiefs can move around some salary cap room. Maybe they can do that, but they also don't have a ton of money. So that makes it challenging. Trading makes it challenging if you're a team that wants to build through the draft because you don't want to give up a ton of draft capital in order to go get somebody because you want to save that on the players young guys that you need that are affordable to fill in there. So, I mean, it's going to be between now and I mean, obviously it's new league year in free agency is creeping us on us, Nick. It's a little over a month away. So they're going to be making some quick decisions right now. I don't know for sure what the Chiefs are going to be doing. I mean, I know we're going to hear a lot in the next month, but I mean, you do have some decisions to make, and it might be a free agent, it might be a trade. I don't know if they're actually going to go down the rookie road again. But to your point, Mr. about that, I mean, if you want to get a starting quality, ready-made left tackle in the NFL in the first round of the NFL draft, you probably need to be in the top 15, top 20 at least. And that's, again, not something that's a big move that costs you a lot of draft capital, but it's going to cost you players that you might want to acquire down the road in the draft. So it is a difficult choose-your-own-adventure at times, Nick.
Did you have Paul Romo's question earlier at 7:14?
We have not gotten to it yet. No.
Okay.
Do you want to go to that now and come back?
No, I mean go in whatever order you're at.
No, oh no, we're way behind, Nick. Don't you know?
Okay,
Don't you know me? Come on.
making sure. I'll speed up my answers for you.
Cody, can we please get Andy to admit his hubris got the best of him? Couldn't see the forest for the trees. I don't know if that was it, Nick. I mean, I just think that. I mean, sometimes the other team's better.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they ran into an Eagles defense that could completely put them in such an uncomfortable position that there wasn't going to be an answer out of it. And it brought to light every flaw that they have, and it forced them to really have to evaluate in the offseason what they want to be as a franchise and where they want to go going forward to not experience a situation like that again.
KY, I saw through the rumor mill that the Chiefs could possibly get Honey Badger back, but he's not listed as a free agent. So is that even a thing? I mean, Tyron still has another year on his contract. It's not a huge number, but he's also going to be 33. I don't know that the Chiefs are looking to go down that road for a reunion, especially when they've got 3 young safeties that they like. And, I think they're looking to build around those guys rather than come and necessarily have a veteran come in. I could be wrong, but I think they're pretty comfortable with the guys that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting that. I lightning around that one like crazy.
Fano. Brett needs to stay away from rookie offensive tackles, especially when they're not from a powerhouse conference. 9 out of 10 don't have the end of Kingsley is a good example. I mean, your mileage may vary, Nick, right? You can.
Can you develop them? Can you develop them? Can you develop them?
Can you develop them?
If you don't, then you're just wasting a pick.
We've seen some pretty good. We've seen good tackles come from 1AA or FCS, rather, I should say. So you can find them anywhere. J. Gar, Andy has no self-criticism. I think he has plenty of self-criticism. Maybe like we talked about earlier, Nick. I mean, maybe too much because he will take responsibility for everything. I mean, I don't think he's never going to necessarily be also the same one who's just going to tell you exactly what he did wrong, because he doesn't want to give anything away. He doesn't want to give anything away for free. Right. But he is. I mean, I give him at least credit for the fact that he's always going to take the blame. And like you said, if he says that's on me, that is him saying that was absolutely my fault. Don't blame anybody else.
Yeah.
Sean, does it feel like Pat was trying to win Super Bowl MVP, not taking what's opening, handing off the ball in light boxes? I mean, that's one. You could probably take my criticism and put it that way, Nick. I mean, I thought that Pat put the game on himself, and sometimes that has worked for him. Sometimes it doesn't. It did not work in this game. Because I thought there were some times that he was getting a little greedy. And let's face it, I mean, that's what Vic Fangio's defense was designed to make Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable and to force him to do exactly what he did, which is to get frustrated and make mistakes.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think Patrick was trying to win Super Bowl MVP. I think he was trying to inspire his teammates and to try to help them get a couple first downs and build up some momentum. That's what he was after. Like the touchdown throw, to Worthy there at the end. I know people are arguing that, there was backups and everything. Yeah, but the authority I saw him throw with and that ball that he put up there, that was him releasing some frustration from how that game had gone.
I think that was 68 air yards.
Yes, it was very close to 70. but I'm telling you, like that, like the way he threw it and the authority he threw it with and everything, I was like, that's a dude trying to release some frustration. Like that's a guy that's upset, and he's like, all right, I got to throw this up here, just to prove to himself that he could do it, and he's still Patrick Mahomes in some regard. So, look, I have no question Patrick Mahomes is going to work hard this offseason to see what Fangio did to him, what answers he thinks he needs to have, and I'm sure he's going to consult with coaches and see what issues they think he needs to work with, or what they all collectively can do to get to a better spot. And I mean, people keep talking about handing the ball off with light boxes and everything. That's fine, But Frank Caliendo was getting pushed back on almost every play. And I mean Mike Caliendo, because Frank Caliendo was a comedian that was watching the game from home and imitating John Madden and Morgan Freeman. But Mike Caliendo, like, he was getting pushed back on most plays because he's playing some really strong defensive tackles. And, like, that's when you have a guy getting walked back that much, like, that already kind of limits what you can do from a run game perspective.
Indeed. Chris, what do you consider to be the ceiling for each of the first-year offensive linemen? I think we're just talking about here Hunter Norzad, CJ Hansen, Ethan Driscoll. Nick, what's your optimism on those?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about first-year guys, you got what? Kingsley Suamata, yeah.
Oh, Kingsley. Forgot about Kingsley. Oh, my gosh. I'm just missing Kingsley.
You want, with what you've invested in him, you want him to become a starter. With what you've invested in Hunter Norzad, you want him to become a starter. Long term, you want Hansen to at least at minimum be depth at guard or center this upcoming year. And then somebody like Ethan Driscoll, you want him to be able to push Jawan Taylor and hopefully long term potentially be able to be a starting tackle. But I still probably think that's probably easily another year or two away. But if I was talking to Kingsley or Hunter Norzad or Ethan Driscoll and even Hansen, I'd be like, go with Creed and Trey. Go down to O-line masterminds every single year. Go down there and learn from it. Go down there and talk. Go down there and try to become a better player and take a lot of what they're telling you and work on it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm in the camp that believes the Chiefs are probably going to try and turn Kingsley Suamata into a guard. He's probably better suited there. There's a lot of people think that he is better suited there. Probably there was a little bit of even discussion about that before the draft, that maybe that was his best position. I think, and that has happened. There's been plenty of guys. Mekhi Becton that we just saw on the Eagles side was another example of that. You know, a player that has the tools that you think can be a tackle, but if doesn't, maybe can turn into an absolutely top of the line, you know, guard. I mean, Joe Thuney, they never even gave any consideration to playing a tackle, but kind of also that kind of thing. I mean, Thuney had the skills to play a tackle, but plug him in a guard, and he's an all-pro. So Kingsley could be an excellent guard. I'm big on Hunter Norzad. I think he's definitely got starting potential sooner than later. CJ Hansen, probably a little bit more work to do. Same with Driscoll, but I have more of a moderate expectations. You know, even though I know that the Chiefs were really high on Driscoll and how well he performed last year during OTAs and training camp, I have more modest expectations. If he can become a reliable swing tackle, that's great by me. I mean, if he can compete for a starting job at right tackle, that's just a win for an undrafted guy. Pano, we need to bring in proven, reliable free agents. Big contracted players need to restructure their contracts to do it. Bring in Tunsil. You want Laramie Tunsil, Nick?
He's not a free agent, so I mean,
there is that.
It's a big part of that problem.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, it goes back. I mean, you're not going to be able to fill all the holes on this team with proven free agents. It's the money's just not there. So you're going to have to pick and choose, and whether you want an impact player, maybe specific positions, and then you're looking for role players and niche players at other spots.
Yep.
Charlie, 5 Super Bowls in 6 years, 5 different left tackles. It has to be solved. It's an incredible accomplishment that Patrick is elevating this offense with left tackle inconsistencies. I guess so. We would just say ditto, right, Nick?
I mean, it doesn't seem like a question. Charlie's just making a statement, but he got you to read it.
He got the question marks in front of it and got me to read it. So therefore, there you go. Steamin' Demon. Matt, as a retired truck driver, just curious, did you go Memphis, Jonesboro, Springfield going back home, or up I-49, Shreveport, Fort Smith, Joplin? You mentioned you didn't enjoy the drive to NOLA. Yeah, the drive to NOLA was unfortunate. I trusted Google GPS. Google GPS took me down US 65 past Little Rock, and boy, did I go through some little towns and 25 mile per hour and stoplights there, Nick. Oh, that was exhausting. I took your first route there, Steamin' Demon. I took the Memphis, Jonesboro, Springfield route back. There was a little bit of awkwardness there. I think I ended up on, I can't remember what I ended up on. It was as a retired truck driver, you'll probably know this, the Jan Howard Freeway. I don't know what it was. That one confused me a little bit, but Google assured me that it was the quickest route. And once again, I trusted Google, and maybe I shouldn't have. I don't know.
I can't believe Jan Howard's got a road name up there. That's fantastic.
I don't even know who Jan Howard is.
I don't either, but
I thought maybe it would be named after former Marshfield great and Missouri State basketball player Marcia Howard, or her sister Julie. But Mr. M, are you excited to see Kingsley Suamadi at right guard this coming season? Let's say he's a guard. Are you excited?
We'll see what he does. I have I'm sorry, I don't have anything either way on that one. I'm trying to find out about Jan Howard and her freeway now.
Could be Jan Howard. I don't know. Maybe it's a dude.
Jan Howard. Oh man, that was all right. Hold on. Expressway. Okay.
Oh, it's that. It's the expressway, not the freeway.
Oh, in Howell Township, Missouri.
It was like, I don't know, 29 miles of something or other.
Jan Howard is a Grand Ole Opry country music singer.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
More you know.
Does Andy Heck have a problem developing tackles, or do scouts fail finding suitable talents for him? Well, you kind of answered that in your rant, Nick. So
rant answered.
Rant answered.
Rewind it. Be kind and rewind.
Rant.
Be kind and rewind.
I'm really stuck here, Nick, in my effort to be a man of the people and recognizing all of the questions, and then understanding that you answered a lot of the questions in your rant, before we saw the questions. So I feel, awkward, because I feel like, hey, I should recognize John, but and
you'd still recognize him. I just got to say,
see above.
Rewind and rewind. I'm just going to keep saying the Blockbuster line.
How about we take his last question? But let me rephrase it. Do you think that do you think, I don't even know. I answered this question. You didn't. Do you think either Reed or Veach should be on the hot seat? I don't, but.
No, what would it take for Heck to be on the hot seat?
I know. Well, that's a yes. I was messing it up. The question, yes. What would it take? I mean, Veach won't get any say, but
I fully expect Andy Heck to be back, and I expect him to be here as long as Andy Reid's here. Personally, I just mentally prepared for that.
All right. Paul, of the main free agents, who is most likely to return: Smith, Reed, Bolton, or Charles? Charles Omenihu.
Bolton.
I will co-sign that. That would be my selection as well. I'm not certain that's going to happen, but I think that's the most likely. Pono, give up this year's number one for a stud left tackle free agent. It will be worth it. Would it be worth it if it's the right guy, Nick?
So they've got to decide one of two things with that first round pick. One, like you said, one, is there somebody they could trade for that, or a team that would be interested in trading their tackle for it? And then two, do they just trade down from their first, pick up another second, and try to either pick up a third or fourth if a team's really liking a guy at 31? Because the Chiefs could use more draft capital in the next 3 years. They could use a lot more draft capital. So that's another part of it. And here's something else I'm going to throw out. Well, actually, I'll throw it out near the end. We'll save it for right now. See where we're at that point.
Jesus with the super chat. Always appreciate that, Jesus. What do we need to know right now about the salary cap situation? I mean, I'm generally seeing top 51 for 2025 right now. The Chiefs are being like anywhere from 15 to 24 million under the cap. There's obviously a lot of room that they can free up, but also when you're talking about, that 51 being under the contract, under 51 players, barely even 51 at this point, because the Chiefs don't have anywhere close to a 90-man roster that you're talking about counting it for that aspect, much less, just a 53 plus your team for the season and injured reserve, practice squad, all of that, and any dead cap money that you may pick up with some moves that you might have to make. So They can free up some cap space. There's no doubt about it, but they've got a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah, looking so Spotrac has them at 15.7 million under right now. Over the cap's got them at 11.5. So we'll see what the salary cap ends up being going from there. And then if you look at hold on, I'm gonna look up something real quick. So moment, please. Loading. And the last NFLPA report had the Chiefs at 3.1 under. So if the Chiefs wanted to carry that over, they potentially could.
They can. And you do have, I think you've got $49 million in cash due to the Bank of Mahomes this year. So you could free up upwards of, let me do my math here, $40 million. Now, you're not going to free up that much money, but in theory, you could.
Well, with Mahomes, it would either, with him, they have it set up, if I remember correctly, in the roster bonus.
The roster bonus, and he's got a base salary that they could obviously reduce down too.
Yeah, I mean, technically, yes, but it seems like the easiest way they just do that is roster bonus wise.
That is the easiest way.
Because you're still technically going to pay it this year. You just essentially cook the books over the life of, or over the 5 years of the contract.
Okay, let me go back to lightning round here. See, I always go over to, whenever I go over to the and this is not a reason to not do a super chat, question and everything. You absolutely should. But then when I go over there, I always forget and lose my place where I was before. But I am coming up on your question, Nick, that you wanted to go to like an hour ago. So
no, what, an hour ago? It was a little bit ago. You're good.
Sharon wants to know, looking forward of the UFAs, who should the Chiefs keep?
I mean, all right, let me pull them up. I mean, if I were in the Chiefs' shoes, Trace Smith is the one I would keep. But the decision they're going to have to make in it is, if you keep Trace Smith, you got to move on from Joe Thuney. And if you keep Trace Smith from a financial perspective, you're probably not getting an elite veteran left tackle. And there still may be a situation right now where the Chiefs have to decide between a elite veteran left tackle, if they really want to chase down that road and give him a new contract, or keeping Joe Thuney. Like they may have to genuinely decide that from a cap perspective. So like that may be something, that may be one of the tough decisions that they have on that front. So that's something I just think people need to be prepared for. Do I still think Joe Thuney's coming back? I do. Do I think Chiefs will try to get a left tackle that's a veteran? I do. And I unfortunately don't think Trey Smith's going to be here next year. I think he's going to get himself a nice little payday somewhere else. I don't think he wants to leave Kansas City, and I don't think the Chiefs want to lose him. But I think it's one of those times they're going to have to make an unfortunate business decision, and you better develop somebody behind him that can equate to that same level or be better. So otherwise, you're going to be bummed a couple years down the road whenever Joe Thuney's retiring and slowly losing his athletic ability just because of his age, and you potentially have a hole at right guard that you're like, man, that would have been great if they could have kept Trey Smith. You just hope you don't get into that situation.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I put these in different classes because, I mean, if you're talking about free agents that you go out and quickly sign, at least early in the process, because, you are going to pay him a little bit. Hey, I would bring back Hollywood Brown. I mean, it would have to, again, be on a similar prove-it type deal with a lot of incentives, but I'd bring him back if he's interested. Nick Bolton, I think you would try to bring back if all possible. You just don't want to be too costly. Charles Omenihu, same kind of category. Then you probably start getting into, I mean, I don't think that the Chiefs and Justin Reed are probably going to be in the same ballpark. I mean, as numbers go, I mean, this is a chance for Justin Reed. He's still not even quite 28 yet.
Yeah,
so
this is his last big payday.
It's his last big contract. So yeah, the Chiefs are not in a position to be able to give anybody their last big contract. So that's why I'm assuming it's just not going to work out. And then you got a lot of other players, the Jujus, the Derrick Notties, Samaje P. Ryans, Kareem Hunt, just, Carson Wentz, DeAndre Hopkins, even. Yeah, I can maybe put DeAndre Hopkins in a different category. But a lot of these guys are, hey, if after the first couple of waves of free agency and they're still available, bring them back. But they're just not guys that I think you would pay a ton of money to bring back.
Yeah, so I'll go through it quickly here in a lightning round style fashion. If I could, Trey Smith would be it would be number one on the priority list for me. Kareem at vet minimum if they could do it. Like you said, Juju Smith-Schuster at vet minimum if he'd be willing to do it. Pennell, I kind of wonder if he's going to retire because he's 34. But if you want to do vet minimum, I get it. James Winchester, there's no reason not to do vet minimum. Bolton, I think I think Steve Spagnuolo loves him. I expect him to be back. Samaje P. Ryan give everything he had, but there's not a lot left in the tank. Justin Watson, there's not a lot left in the tank. Derrick Nottie, I could see coming back on vet minimum at some point, just because he's a role player that's serviceable and he played better this year than the previous year, looked healthier. Carson Wentz, I think he'll try to go see if he can go find an opportunity because it's kind of one of his last chances to maybe start in the league for a couple years. Wharton, I think, is going to get a big payday out on the open market or a bigger payday, like a Mike Dana type payday. And the Chiefs, I don't think, can pay Wharton and Dana. Joshua Uche, I think, is going to be elsewhere. DJ Humphrey, I think, would be a vet minimum thing. Brown, I wouldn't be stunned if he tried to go to, I don't know, Buffalo. Charles Omenihu, I think I wouldn't. I would love him back here, but I also completely get if he takes a bigger payday somewhere else. I think Justin Reed's going to get a payday somewhere else, and that should be every unrestricted free agent.
And I agree across the board. I mean, I know Trey Smith's not coming back. They can't afford to bring back Trey Smith, but everything else, we're on the same page, Nick. Pano, show Nagy the door. 7 running plays. Are you kidding? Bring back Bieniemy. I mean, it's not Nagy's fault. I mean, 51% of the offense is Andy Reid.
So I'll start with Bieniemy first. He's the running backs coach for the Bears now. He's already got a contract. He's property of the Chicago Bears at this point. So however long that contract is, Eric Bieniemy's in with the Bears. So it ain't happening. He's going to be the running backs coach there. And he's also got 2 people in his corner, and Ted Cruz, who's in the front office, and also Ryan Poles, the general manager. So it's not an accident that he's there with 2 former familiar Chiefs faces that can vouch for who he is especially as a running backs coach. And again, people can keep trying to say that Matt Nagy's a problem. But like Matt said, at the end of the day, this is Andy Reid's show. So you gotta stop. You gotta stop thinking that just when things aren't successful, it's all Matt Nagy's fault, or it's all Eric Bieniemy's fault, or it's all this person's fault or that person's fault. It's a collective group tank that they're gonna have to add a couple more people in that have different vantage points to be able to help them inspire their offense and give them some new wrinkles in different ways.
Nikki, have you ever seen a worst 15 one running play out of 10? I mean, if we want to get into the nuts and bolts of it here, I mean, this is another one of the problems that the Chiefs had with just their inability to get anything done on first and second down. I mean, it took them most of the first half to be able to plow through their script if they wanted to, because, third downs, not on the script. I mean, those are a specific different play sheet. There might even be, some second and longs that are, a different part of the play sheet than the script. I mean, whether it was just the Eagles being able to take them out of it or the Chiefs getting out of their own rhythm. I mean, they never really had any chance whatsoever to establish their script.
Yeah. And I personally think after the first couple series, the first 15 was out the window at that point. Like once they got down 10 or especially when they got down 17, I don't think first 15 existed anymore. I think they were having to do a whole new game plan at that point to try to get back in and try to catch up to at least get points on the board, and it never worked out.
I would be curious to know how many plays out of their opening script they actually ran, because I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than half.
I would assume 3 for sure. And after that,
maybe 4 or 5. Yeah. Alicia, who would you be excited about to bring new coaching ideas? Ooh, I like that question.
Matt, if you've got some, go ahead, because I got to go double check what their titles are.
I mean, well, I mean, there's nobody that jumps out at me immediately, but I mean, I would say I would look everywhere. I mean, and I did mention at least my ideas and everything like that, and you kind of echoed it when you came in, Nick. Is that to me, it's you're looking for players who and coaches rather that are not from the Andy Reid tree. They're not in that family, even the other branches of the tree from the Mike Holmgren tree. You want something completely fresh. I think you want some people that have different ideas than what Andy Reid has and different ideas than the other coaches have. And I would look in the colleges. I think there's obviously some very good coaches in college. Andy Reid's brought in, senior assistant types before. I mean, there was the Chris Alt days and the Brad Childress days. I'm intrigued because you know so many more coaches than I do, Nick, especially down at the position coach level.
So one of the guys, I'll give you names I had my eyes on, and some of them got promotions and some of them already went elsewhere, which means other people actually in the league recognize them. One of them that I had my eye on was Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach for Ohio State, that just got promoted to offensive coordinator. Chip Kelly left. Brian Hartline's former wide receivers coach. He's not going to be at Ohio State. How he does this year at Ohio State, in all honesty, is going to determine how quickly he makes it back up to the NFL ranks just from a coaching level versus a player level when he's a wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. Another guy who actually potentially is still available, I need to go double check, is Edgar Bennett. He's the former Packers running back that you will remember from the Brett Favre days. Would technically be part of the Andy Reid tree, but he was the wide receivers coach for the Raiders, and I think they just parted ways with him recently. I don't think he's gotten hired by. Sorry, because some of their old bios are up right now. He may have just gotten hired by the Jaguars on the road. But that would be another potential. The one I need to go double check his name, but Matt already knows, is the Oklahoma offensive line coach that has an ability to. I want to pronounce his last name right, because dude, I said it to you like 5 or 6 times the other day.
Yeah, that's why got me excited about the question, because I was like, "Ooh,
I knew you were wanting me to go there.
I was leading you there, Nick. I'm not gonna lie.
I know you were.
I'm the worst.
No, that's exactly who you were. I'm sorry. I want to say his name correctly. So he's been Creed's coach. He's been an offensive line coach at Oklahoma for quite some time. He's been able to evaluate multiple people. I'm saying he's got an offensive lineman from Oklahoma drafted pretty much every year, including some guy named Creed Humphrey, Anton Harrison, another guy that they liked. Orlando Brown was under him. Tyler Guyton was under him.
NFL ready players.
Yeah, guys that once they come in, that from a technique perspective, they're pretty ready to go. If I want to say Ben Bebo, if I remember correctly, I think it's Ben Bebo is how it's pronounced. Benenbo. It might be Benenbo. He's been Benenbo. But either way, he's somebody that I had my eye on as well. Another one that selfishly I'm a fan of, but he actually turned down a job, and I don't know. I think it'd be tough to be able to get him. Nathan Shieldhouse. He is the offensive assistant and passing game specialist. Nathan's had a really good career.
He's meteoric at this point.
Well, what people don't know about Nathan is I covered him when he was the quarterback at Rockhurst High School. And Nathan was a really good quarterback for Tony Severino at Rockhurst High School.
Simone Award winner, right?
Simone Award. And Nathan, it's been really cool to kind of watch his coaching career from afar, because he was a quarterback at Illinois, and if I remember correctly, he was Jeff Allen's quarterback. From what if I remember, I think him and Jeff Allen crossed at the same time there. So that was somebody I think I talked with Jeff about a handful of times. But Nathan played at Illinois. I know he was one of the rising coaches in 2019, 30 under 30 at one point. He's had time. He was at Iowa State for a long time. Then he got the big break to go to the Rams and kind of learn from the Sean McVay tree. and he's been there as, like I said, the offensive assistant and passing game specialist. He's a guy that I think whatever title you got to find for him, find it. Let him, since he's been a part of that Sean McVay tree, let him kind of be able to use a piece of that, because he was interviewed for the offensive coordinator job with the Jaguars because Liam Cohen was trying to get him. And Liam Cohen was somebody a couple years ago I was really selfishly hoping when the Chiefs were potentially added on the coaching staff when either McCullough left to go to Indiana at the time, and McCullough's now at Notre Dame, DeLeland McCullough. Liam Cohen was the guy I was really kind of crossing my fingers that Andy would interview and kind of take the chance to on. And then Liam went to the Rams for a little bit, and then he went and crushed it this past year when he finally became Bucs OC, and now he's the Jaguars head coach. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys that consistently, whether it's O-line or wide receiver coaches, that I'm still intrigued by. That I got to look this guy's, like, for example, I need to double check if Eric got a job or not. This is the one. There's another one from, because, dude, everybody's hiring from the Sean McVay tree because it's able to beat a lot of different defenses. Like, and I think Eric, unfortunately, I think Eric got it. No, Eric's still there. Okay. Eric Yarborough, the wide receivers coach for the Rams. That would be tough to do since he's already position coach. The only way you could do that is like a bigger title or OC, and I still think the Rams will block it. But Eric has he's helped develop Cooper Kupp, Puka. He's obviously helped DeMarcus Robinson to some of the best of his career. That is another individual that I don't know what you'd have to do title wise, and I don't know if the Rams would give you permission to let him kind of move on. And a guy I was watching was Joe Philbin, the former Miami Dolphins head coach. He had time in Green Bay, but I think Pete Carroll retained him.
He's on the Vegas staff, and
yeah, so I think he's sticking.
McCullough that you mentioned on the Vegas staff.
Do what?
Dylan McCullough, who you mentioned, is also on the Vegas staff.
Oh, did he just leave?
He is. He was with Pete Carroll's staff now that they announced today.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
okay. Yeah, because he was just at Notre Dame. So yeah, I'll have to take a little inventory and see who all is moving there, because the list was based on people that were still around. Another guy that I'd kind of been keeping tabs on was Grant Hurd. He was at Eastern Michigan last, but I want to say I'll have to look. I can't remember if he was at he had a pretty strong career at Ole Miss there for a while. That I can't remember, because there was a Missouri coach too, and I don't know if he's still there because I haven't been able to keep tabs. But at one point, Jacob Peeler, the Missouri wide receivers coach, that was another individual that I was intrigued by because he was the coach for DK Metcalf, and drawing a blank right now. The other really stud, AJ Brown, just played in the Super Bowl. Yeah, and Jacob Peeler's I think he's a sneaky little good rock star too. And what he's done in Missouri with the wide receivers as well. That's another guy that intriguing, Matt. So I went entirely too long on that one, and that was not a lightning round. I apologize, Alicia, but I hope I gave you some names.
Alicia will never apologize. Feel bad about the non-lightning round answer, so we're good. Sean B brings up an interesting point that I kind of want to fold into Alicia's question. Would you bring in someone who can scheme a physical run style more than Andy's zone? I mean, we know NFL titles are usually for pay purposes and, just moving coaches around, structuring a staff in a certain way. So sometimes they don't mean what they say that they mean. But let's say you are Andy Reid. Let's say you do want to remain loyal to Andy Heck and you want to, keep things, some continuity. Maybe you're not wanting the change with Todd Pinkston, keep him at the running backs coach. What if you were to bring in somebody, and it could certainly be some of the names that we're mentioning, bring them as a run game coordinator. You've got Joe Blameyer as a pass game coordinator. Bring in another coach that, I get that it can sometimes be to some conflicting, possibilities and conflicting messages, but maybe that's an option to at least bring somebody in that, gets into that room and gets in there to bring a different voice as far as, what the run game elements are, how to block for them, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. Because I know like Joe Blameyer, they have as the passing game coordinator. So I mean, they can create whatever title they want. It's just they need some
I mean,
additional.
you can add a coach. You don't have to necessarily subtract, but you can add a coach and just juggle responsibilities.
See what they do.
Here's the question I know you were looking for, Nick. We finally got to it. If you had to be weak at some positions because of salary cap restrictions, which positions would you prefer?
I don't know if the. So here's the way I'm gonna kind of formulate this. So right now on the defensive side of the ball, Joe Cullen is a good coach that's able to develop as long as as long as he sticks around. Like he can develop offensive linemen with what talent you give him. Then you take somebody like Brendan Daly. He's been able to develop the linebacker since he moved to that role. And then you take somebody like Dave Merritt who can literally develop. He gets the best of every single corner or safety that they have available in them. So he maxes out their talent and their ability. Now, for people that say they're picking on this player or that player, they're still at the ceiling of what they can probably be at that given point in their career. So the Chiefs have been able to get by on the cheap on the defensive side of the ball for the past couple years. The thing is, the bill's going to come due in the next year or two for that defensive side of the ball. So why we're talking about offense in the way that I am is you, from a position coach perspective, whether it's the guys you got on staff or somebody else, they've got to be able to start developing some guys on the cheap, because you're either going to have to pay the defense, or at some point you're going to start losing some position coaches on defense, and then you're going to have to pay for talent that's already developed at that point. So like that's the balance. That's kind of the tough balancing act right now. So there's only so much you can pay along the offensive line, because if you look at it right now on the Chiefs offensive line, they're paying Joe Thuney, they're paying Creed Humphrey, they're paying Jawan Taylor, and they had the performance that they did in the Super Bowl. And between Creed's new contract that's going to end up averaging $18 million a year, Joe Thuney's contract salary cap that's going to be almost $27 million this year, Jawan Taylor's is going to be 27.3. Your offensive line, for paying that type of premium, you're going to need better production from a couple of those spots. And then on top of it, you need those cheap guys that you are developing to be able to be up to a championship caliber level. And so like that's the tough balancing act a lot of teams have, is they need to be able to develop the talent, get the most out of them in year 2 to 4, and then be able to do it all over again if they have to, or another position coach at another spot. So I mean the like for the Chiefs this upcoming year, that 2022 draft class that they've been able to kind of lean on from a cheap perspective to have impact, like after this year that bill comes due. So who's replacing them? Is it at another position or is it at another spot? I mean, O-line, I think you can, if you have a good O-line coach, I think you can do that cheaply, but also develop them. And it just depends on what type of strength training you have and where they are from a technique perspective. D-line, you like to have young, fast, dominant players that you can develop. And I think linebacker-wise, you don't have to pay a premium at linebacker in the league right now. In an ideal world, if you can get away like the Chiefs have been able to with Dave Merritt, just turning as much ability as he has at the cornerback spot without having to pay somebody $20 million a year, like they've been able to do that. So those offensive line positions that they're paying elite money to right now, at some point, that's going to end up having to move to another position to pay them, whether that's going to be a number 1 wide receiver or they're going to have to, at some point, they're going to have to pay a premium left tackle, whether they develop them down the road or something else. So it's a back and forth of having enough position coaches that can continually develop guys to pay them at on their rookie contracts before you have to try to play whack-a-mole every single year as a general manager.
Yeah, and I mean, and the Chiefs, you can see their philosophy on a couple of positions. I mean, since Dustin Colquitt left, they've had nothing but rookie contract punters.
Yep.
They've not given big contracts to running backs, and I mean, unless there's a unicorn out there, unless I mean, I was wrong on Saquon Barkley. I mean, I did not think he had this season left in him. I would have been in the camp of, no, you don't, no, Saquon Barkley, no, he doesn't have enough juice left. He clearly had a lot of juice left. So, if there's a unicorn out there, sure, pay them, but there's just not that many. I mean, Saquon might be the only guy in the league right now as a running back that you'd say pay that money to. But you probably need a little bit more speed and juice in your backfield, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay for it. You just might have to draft for it rather than signing as an undrafted free agent. And to your point, Nick, I mean, if you're talking about positions where do you want to be weaker, it is where you have the best coaches. So that's why I think the Chiefs have been really smart. I mean, as far as, they haven't gone out and signed big name corners. I mean, they have signed safeties when they've had holes, but I think right now they're in a spot, obviously, where they feel like they don't necessarily have to go out and sign somebody to replace Justin Reed because they've drafted well enough and developed well enough that they're okay there. I mean, that's what, when you got a guy like Dave Merritt, you want to be able to do is just continue to bring in new young talent for him to coach up, and that so you never end up when you're having to, one, overpay in free agency, but two, when you hit on a stud like Trent McDuffie, you keep your own guys. And that's one position where I would say is the exception to the rule. You're going to pay Trent McDuffie, but then you're going to surround Trent McDuffie with a lot of young, cheap guys. All right, we're going to try and get through quickly here. I know I think Nick and myself, I think, we'll probably have to get out of here around 9, but we're going to do our best to get through here. And Mr. M, I just saw your question, so I'm going to come up in the super chat next. But Paul, how can rookie Mahomes throw 50 yards downfield for 50 touchdowns, 5,200 yards, and get worse every season after Burrow, Allen all see shell coverage and go downfield with ease? What's the deal?
I'm going to do every one of these questions briefly going forward so we get through as many as possible. Burrow has Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, had Tyler Boyd at one point. Once he doesn't have all them and he's only got Jamar Chase, we'll see what happens from there. Allen has routinely had a really good offensive line, and now he's got one of the best offensive lines in the league, and he's got James Cook. So that is the differences between Mahomes and those guys is different skill set, O-line and different skill sets.
Yep, I can't say necessarily any better myself.
All right, cool.
Mr. M, any idea who the new assistant general manager is going to be? I am not certain, but I can give you 3 names that I think it will come from. I think it will come from either Chris Shea, Tim Terry, or Mike Bradway, and I think Bradway is probably the best bet, although Chris Shea is the highest one on the depth chart, so in the org chart. So Chris is probably the most logical choice from that standpoint. Bradway is probably the highest climber. Tim Terry is the guy who, if he became the assistant general manager, I think he would be a general manager in the league very, very soon.
Nailed it, Matt. Keep going.
Lightning round.
7:15, Steam and Demons. Next question. Go.
I actually knew that this time.
Go.
I was keeping track. Matt, since Chiefs didn't get Joe Alt in the draft, Wikipedia shows Joe Alt coaching a school, thinking outside about the Jocks and having John Alt hired by the Chiefs. I should have said John Alt coaching a school. I don't know. Where is John Alt coaching? Nick, do you know?
I'll have to check, but here's the thing that you need to understand whenever it comes to that type of stuff. Do they want to do that type of commitment? Because being an offensive line coach is a thankless job, and having to potentially dedicate their life to it, that's the thing. So the place where John was coaching at was in St. Paul, Minnesota, where him and his wife lived at. So, but I think he was coaching Joe at the time. I don't know if he's still doing that.
Yeah, and John Alt, I mean, Minnesota is his home and everything. So I that's what I would imagine. I can't imagine him leaving his home. He's 62, making the jump back into the NFL. He doesn't need the money, so it's. I like the outside the box thinking, Steam and Demon, but probably not an answer.
Lightning round.
Weston Brewer, do you see them spending any decent amount of money in free agency?
Just depends on if there's a player we're not expecting to join the market. If not, then no, I do not.
Concur. KC Chiefs 12, tired of the Band-Aid fixes at left tackle. Let's sign or draft a legitimate left tackle, not a Band-Aid left tackle.
I don't think that their intention is to have Band-Aid left tackles. I think that's just what because they haven't been able to find the right fit. That's just what they're having to do to at least have somebody of competent value is their goal at minimum.
And if you want a surefire, out of the box, ready to start year one left tackle, you got to be in the top 20 or top 15. So if you're willing to trade there to get to it, but also teams don't let legitimate left tackles hit free agency. So that's the other part of the problem. Nikki, would it have been better to keep Allegretti as a starter than to try to go with a rookie or the Band-Aid of Tooney and Caliendo?
Allegretti would have been serviceable, but I think he was out of the price range of what they were willing to pay. And yeah, I don't think they planned on Tooney going to left tackle this year.
No, I mean Tooney was break glass in case of emergency. So if you kept Allegretti, they're really, I mean, yes, he would have been playing there next to Tooney, but you wouldn't have been able to keep him because, I mean, you could have offered Nick Allegretti the same amount of money that Washington offered him. He still would have gone to Washington because he wanted to start. He didn't want to be a backup anymore. I don't blame him. So
nailed it.
There you go.
Nice.
I think we're too early for this one, right, Nick? The top 5 guard prospects in this year's draft?
Absolutely no idea, and I wouldn't even have gotten a guard anyways. You want to tackle if you're going to get a tackle in the draft. Moving on. You already invested in your guards last year.
Brian always reminds everybody to hit that like button, but I don't remind them, so I always have to go to Brian when we need to.
Brian, like button. Good, go.
The current crop of wide receivers, it is affordable. Why would KC not bring back most of them? Why not build continuity with what is a good wide receiver room?
Because they need faster wide receivers that can get open quicker if they're not going to have the line that can give them time. Boom, done, go.
Yeah, I bring back Hollywood, but the rest of it, I mean, it is a good room. You need a great room. KC Chiefs 12 heard the crowd was split 75-25 in favor of the Eagles. It sounded like more on TV. How was it at the game? I thought it was going to be 80-20 going in. And honestly, I mean, at times I thought the Chiefs fans held their own. I mean, they made some noise, but it was an Eagles crowd. And, you know, I made the comment that I thought it was about 80-20 in the French Quarter. And a Chiefs fan who was there said that it was more like that the Chiefs fans took over the bars and the Eagles fans took over the streets. Maybe that was the case, but it was a decisive Eagles crowd. I don't think there was any doubt about that. And there was a lot more green in the Chiefs side of the field than there was red in the Eagles side of the field. Chiefs comments, it gets ignored when the Chiefs win, but especially when they lose, the issue seems to be a mix of complacency and stubbornness from top to bottom. Do you see that, Nick?
No, I just think sometimes there's only so much that they can do with a roster, man. So it is what it is.
Joe, the Chiefs running backs just fair, but to help O-line game, you need to run balance offense to give them breaks while run blocking. Was not coaching game plan the dagger that hurt the O-line?
You need a line that can run the ball. Against that Eagles front, they weren't going to be able to run the ball. That became pretty clear pretty quickly, so they had to abandon it, try to pass to get back in the game. That didn't work. It snowballed. Things went sideways. They'll have to make upgrades this offseason. Lightning round.
And this would fit back with if you had a speed back, that would also help out, loosen things up a little bit.
And get there quicker, bounce it outside, deuces.
Draft hierarchy needs left tackle, D-line, running back, linebacker, cornerback.
Left tackle, a bunch of D-line. Yes, they need. I want to see them get running backs. And then I think those first 3 is the most important. And then I would either get a wide receiver or tight end or both. Do you want to get corners as well? Sure. Linebacker wise, I don't know if you're going to be able to. They may have to invest this year, and then another position has to save for the following year. But I think they'll touch on all of them, whether it's undrafted free agents, draft, whatever. They'll get all of it fixed, or they'll add somebody at all spots.
I would tick all those boxes. I would put a 3 in front of D-line. I would add wide receiver. Let's see. Oh, I clicked on the wrong button because I already went to that one. Doctor Who, was there just as much mental vibe stuff going against the Chiefs, people picking against them, anyone but the Chiefs, weird political stuff with Trump picking them, three-peat pressure? I mean, of all those things you listed out, I think the only thing that you could say that would possibly affected the Chiefs, I think, was maybe the three-peat pressure.
Probably three-peat. Boom, done.
Chiefs comments. You see the pushback from the fan base if Veach, Reed, and company aren't moving heaven and earth to preserve a very good O-line for the rest of Mahomes' career.
I think it just depends on if they win AFC championships and Super Bowls, because people will forget if that's the case.
This is true. If they win, you're never going to remember what was wrong with the team. And that's probably true with a couple of the other teams that they won, because they won with some offensive line that wasn't fantastic across the board. Jackson, more of a personal question. How did you get into sports journalism? Well, I wanted to go into sports journalism. I studied sports journalism in college. I was convinced not to go into sports journalism and stayed in Kansas City, worked in PR for many, many years, and then accidentally wandered back into sports journalism. That's the lightning round answer, Jackson. We'll give you a better answer sometime, outside of a lightning round. I promise.
Yeah, I've answered the broadcasting thing in other Q&As, and we're in lightning round mode. So boom, done.
John, would it have been better if they didn't have the bye after the AFC Championship game? They looked emotionally tired.
No, I don't think it would have been. Boom, done.
Especially because the Eagles, coming off that NFC Championship game, they had a steam that they just went ahead and carried on for 2 weeks. So it might have been worse after 1 week.
Yep.
What does Worthy's performance say about what he can be next season? He played like a superstar.
Yep. Continue to develop. Hope he continues to develop. Hope they build off the Super Bowl. Boom, done.
He's got a chance to be a 1,000-yard receiver next year in my book. So, does that question keep coming up? Did Joe just ask it 3 times? I'm sorry, Joe.
You probably might have.
I'm looking for something, everybody, that's just a little bit different from what we've had.
Oh, offensive line questions or what?
I'm looking for question marks that don't involve the offensive line or the coaching staff. Sorry, DJ. And as always, if I overlook your question, feel free to ask it in the chat afterwards in the comment section, because I will definitely be glad to answer it there. And Nick is even more prompt about answering those questions than I am, and does a much better job. And sometimes has to put some people in their places, but that's just what has to happen.
Eagles fans certainly decided to come in the comment section this week.
Oh, great.
They did.
With what appears to be missed in drafts at O-tackle and defensive end, do you think changes need to be made in the scouting evaluation, or is it simply player development and coaching? I guess we talked a little bit about that already. Nick, my apologies.
Be kind and rewind.
The short answer is yes. No, and I haven't even got down to where the Eagles fans come in, but 11 out of 10 on the rant, Nick.
The Eagles thing was on our 41's the Mic comment section.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
People were very upset about their technical issues of you being in a hotel with poor Wi-Fi, and they were very upset that your quality wasn't up to the Google Fiber par that you normally have.
I know that's a very sarcastic 3 from Sharon. So,
but maybe not.
No, I know it. Sharon's on board. So,
Matt, I'm gonna share my shirt while you're looking. So
go for it. I've been wondering about it.
Yeah, it's for the weather report with storms coming in tonight with snow. My chance of sarcasm goes up each day. Today it's at 94%. Tonight it's at 97%. Tomorrow it's at 92%. Forever it's at 100. So there's your 4-day forecast of sarcasm.
Here's the crazy thing, Brent. I mean, you mentioned this. I knew some people who got last minute tickets to go to the game, and they wouldn't have if the tickets were not as low as they were. Now, I know they were still extremely high, but this was a cheaper Super Bowl to get into. And I think part of it is obviously that there weren't as many Chiefs fans that traveled. So it's a weird thing, but, and I don't know. And I've got to ask, I got a lot of questions about the celebrities, and do they have to buy their own tickets, Nick?
What? I'm looking through comments. Something about tickets.
Do celebrities that go to the Super Bowl have to buy their own tickets?
I don't know. It looked like a lot of them had press credentials or had credentials on, or had somebody bought a suite and they had a credential for a suite.
That's absolutely possibly the case. Ooh. DJ, what do you think Mahomes needs to work on this offseason? Accuracy, deep ball, etc.? I'm
sure him and Bobby and his coach Christensen, his QB's coach Christensen, they're going to work on they're going to work on everything possible to get him back to zen for next year.
Chiefs fan 15. Why was Humphreys active if he wasn't healthy enough to play? If he was healthy, him not going in the first quarter is insane. I mean, he was healthy. I just don't think that it would have changed anything, Nick.
I mean, I'm disappointed they didn't give him the chance to go out there, but obviously they decided against it, and there's not anything we can do about it now, and we'll see what happens next year.
AZ Chief, which scout is responsible for offensive line, or is it still separated by region? Hire me, and I'll draft any left tackle named Josh in round 1. It is separated by region, so yeah, the scouts work in their specific areas. There's not just one specifically for positions, but
that would make life a lot easier if it was scouts by position groups.
You'd have to do a lot of traveling.
No, not really. I mean, the traveling you do is really more for fact finding about the player in practice and stuff. Like you could watch tape on any player around college. You could. I mean, just some position groups would be a lot more players than others.
Yeah. Dylan, what is a realistic tag and trade idea for Trey? What compensation would you expect? I mean, that's the tricky thing, is that I just don't know that is something that the Chiefs feel like that they can pull off. A year ago they did that with L'Jarius Sneed because Brett Veach was convinced that he could trade L'Jarius Sneed and get compensation. This I think is going to be more difficult. I mean, the tag number I think is 19 million would be for Trey. A little bit lower than I was thinking it was going to be, but I mean, can you tag and trade him? I mean, the problem is that there's going to be a lot of teams on the other side who are going to be playing a game of chicken with the Chiefs to say, we're not going to trade for him until, you have to. I mean, until you lower your terms, because the Chiefs don't have the cap space to carry that $19 million tag or whatever it ended up being, for any amount of time. I mean, they would need the tag and get it done immediately. And other teams know that. So I think that would be the hindrance with getting a good deal. And from talking to people behind the scenes, I'm not convinced that they think that that's going to happen. So I'd be surprised if we saw a tag and trade. I think it's much more likely that you're going to see him test free agency, and the Chiefs will likely get a 3rd round pick back for him.
Yeah, don't see a tag and trade happening. Boom, done. Lightning round.
Let's see. The current crop of wide receivers, it is affordable. Why would KC? Why are these questions repeating? I'm sorry.
Because people wanted them answered sooner in the show.
Well, that's a very fair point, and that's my fault. And so, Nick, are you ready to whisper your best available player at the Chiefs draft position yet?
I haven't watched anybody. I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to not do football.
I know you are.
I'm beyond burnout, people. I'm not a robot, okay? I'll get the draft when I get the draft.
The last half of the question, 31, do you go positional value or you go best available?
You always go best available.
There you go. That's the right answer.
I'm sorry. I'm not a robot. I've been doing this since, I don't remember, July at this point. I'm going to take a little break.
I'd love to answer AZ Chief's question, but I don't know the answer, and I probably shouldn't say about the other part of it. So,
what time are you at?
That was at 8:14.
Okay. All right. Wow, you're way ahead. I love it.
There you go. Just curious, are you able to contact and talk with the free agent players, or you still have to go through the Chiefs office? Oh no, I mean, once they're not Chiefs anymore, Chiefs don't have anything to do with it. So we can talk to those guys anytime we want to without getting our little hand snapped. So
I have no idea what you're talking about, Matt.
Oh, I'm looking for one more good question to get us out on, because I know both Nick and I need to get out of here. And I apologize. I will circle back and try to answer as many of these questions that we didn't get to as possible. Remember, there's a pretty good chance if you asked your question, it was about the offensive line or the coaching staff. We did talk about it earlier, so you can always go back and revisit that. And, oh, man, Siam, I would love to go off on AP voting and who some individuals did and did not vote for.
No, sorry. You said you wanted to do that as its own separate podcast.
It's going to be its own separate podcast later.
So don't ruin that.
All right. We talked about this a little bit, but it's a good question to go out on from Neo. Nick, your opinion on Brian Cook? He seems a little limited, my view-wise, almost like a smaller Bolton, has difficulty in coverage.
He had really good range before he broke his ankle, foot, whatever it was in that region. So like he had really good range and explosiveness and ability to change direction. Once he came back from that this year, he could do half a field without a problem, but having to do single high on his own was a bit more of a struggle for him. And I mean, we'll see where he's at next year. I think he'll get some of it back, or I'm hoping he'll get some of it back, and we'll see where he's at. Because I mean, if I'm correct, it's a contract year next year for him. So like it's going to determine a lot about what type of money he can make long term for himself.
I lied. I'm going to go one last question, Nick, because this is a good one. I have not heard much talked about, and I know you've watched the game film now a couple of times from Mitchell. Why did Chris Jones disappear? No anything in the stat sheet. What did you really see as far as how the Eagles played Chris Jones?
I mean, part of it was that, I mean, Chris, I don't know. Part of me kind of wonders if that calf ever got back to 100%. Because it seemed like a couple times during the postseason that like it kind of disrupted him, and at times it seemed like he wasn't able to keep the same level of explosiveness that he did. Then he had to take the knee brace off there at one point, and then that knee seemed to be bothering him, and then he got made doubtful. Well, he came back in for a minute, and then he went back out, and he was announced as doubtful for the rest of the game. So obviously, I don't know the situation and everything, but I think part of it was just snap counts and injuries caught up to him this year, and I don't think he was able to kind of be able to maintain through the same level he needed to, and they don't have anybody that they can rotate in with him that can have that same level of impact pass rush wise. And the double teams he was taking throughout the year, those wear down on you over the entire year. So I mean, like they need another pass rusher that can command that. I mean, he could to a certain point, but he wasn't really truly 100% healthy. And if he was, I think he would have really helped out Chris a great deal this year. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with the Minihue situation next year. But, I mean, that's why I think the Chiefs need to add to their D-line, because they need to add additional guys that take stress off Chris Jones so they can be able to use him longer.
Yep, that's the reality of it. All right, everybody, we're going to call it wraps for tonight. I hope this helped a little bit. Hopefully had a little bit of fun. Hopefully got some good stuff, good answers. We're going to, like I said, if there's any questions that we missed, hit them in the comments section. Hit us up on Twitter. We'll be glad to answer them. As long as they're not, sarcastic trolling from Eagles fans, which none of you are. So we'll put a bow on this one for tonight. Nick, any parting thoughts?
41's the mic will be back again on Sunday for another episode.
Very exciting.
Because the season ends doesn't mean that we do. Matt and I got to decide which topic we want to do of the ones we've got planned here in the next 6 to 7 weeks. So we'll figure that out, and we will be back every Sunday. So football may be over, but 41 is the mic can still keep you in touch with football every Sunday.
That is correct. And we'll be back on Sunday, and then next week, another Chiefs Digest Q&A. So everybody have a great week. We will talk to you later. Enjoy yourselves, and thanks as always for joining us. Hit the like button, hit the bell button, whatever you do. And if once again we did get somebody who gave us a 5-star review last week on one of their platforms where they would listen to the podcast. So if you listen to 41 is the mic, go give us a 5-star review on the platform of your choice so more people can find the podcast.
The podcast, you say?
All things Chiefs, right here. 41 is the mic, a Chiefs podcast on your home of the Chiefs. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts. Also available to watch on